So today we'll talk about karma. I'll break this talk into two sections. In the beginning we'll just discuss what is karma, and questions like how much bad karma did Hitler get anyways? And we'll just, go all around and figure out pretty much what karma is. In the second half of the talk we will discuss what can we do about it? How can we get rid of this big burden called karma? Or can we even? Some people say it's all fixed and there's nothing we can do about it. So we'll discuss that. We'll answer those questions. So to begin with, what is karma? Well, it is said that the root comes from the Sanskrit word, or the Sanskrit root kri, which means action. Newton said that for every action, there is a reaction. And so you can find actually that for every spiritual law, there is a corresponding scientific law. And the corresponding spiritual law for every action there is a reaction is karma. So that if we do good deeds, then good deeds come back to us. If we do bad deeds, then eventually bad deeds come back to us. But this gets so confusing because they don't just come back right away. That there is what Master called the thwarting cross currents of ego. And because then that means that the boomerang, it doesn't just come right back. It might come back much later. And Jaya is going to talk about that in this section of reincarnation. Now, when we talk about karma, and talking a little bit here about reincarnation, there's a spiritual law, and it's an interesting one. It is that every desire must be fulfilled. And Swami Kriyananda said, whoa, to Paramahansa Yogananda when he said, every desire? Even the little desire I had, maybe just a fleeting little thought for an ice cream cone? And Master said, oh yes, every desire must be fulfilled. And so it is desire that binds us to the wheel of reincarnation and keeps us coming back again and again. And it is desire that sets up all karma. And at the end we'll talk more about physical karma, astral karma, causal karma, but I don't want to talk about that right now. I want to talk actually about that there's two kinds of karma. There's an individual karma and there's a mass karma. We'll get into Hitler right away. So the question is, did he receive all of the bad karma for the choices that he made? Or please come in, did some of the, or all of the citizens of Germany, did they also share some of that karma? What do you think? Anybody? Do you think that they shared some of the karma, all the citizens of Germany? Yes, Master said that they did. That Hitler didn't just take on all of that bad karma by himself. That because the people voted for him, that they supported him at least at some point, that they too took on some of that bad karma. Of course he would gain the most of that bad karma. And so mass karma is very complex. That all of our karma is all interrelated. And mass karma can be attracted to anything that has a coherent, intentional center. And so we could take even Mumbai, that there's a government for Mumbai that has a city, that many of us say, I'm a Mumbaiker. And so that means it has this coherent center, and so it will have a mass karma. And that will continue on for even lifetimes. And now, our job here is not really to fix the mass karma, it's to fix only our individual karma. But if we put too much emphasis on fixing the outward mass karma, then we will get lost. We're just here to fix our individual karma. And so let's talk a little bit about individual karma. That I want to talk about, I forget the Sanskrit word, but anyway, there's a type of karma that comes to us, Purushkar, that's the name of this karma. And this is just karma that is, it's like guidance from our soul. It has nothing to do from the past. Our soul is just telling us in this moment that we need to do this. And this is the type of guidance that we are trying to tune into as devotees all the time. That we're trying to listen to our higher nature. We're trying to listen to God, to these subtle commands from the soul telling us what to do and helping guide us through life. It is said that when we are in the astral world and we decide to take a birth, that there's a blueprint. The same way that an architect makes a blueprint to build a building, that there's a blueprint for our life. And that it might be 75%, don't quote me on that, I'm not sure about it, is already pretty much fixed of how it will go. And so that would be that you're tuning back into that somewhat subconscious memory within yourself, all the different stages in this incarnation that are supposed to go, and it's already planned and fixed. And then there's the other karmas that come in, and these are the prarabdha karmas, and there's two types of these. One type is that it can never germinate in this life. And an example is that if you have a karma to drown, but you live in a desert where there's no water, then there's no way. It can't happen, and that will simply have to wait until the next life. And then the other type of that karma is karma that certainly will find fruit in this incarnation. I want to talk a little bit about how this works. There was a student who once asked, which is stronger, magnetism or karma? And if you come to we have level 1 classes, level 2 classes that take you towards learning Kriya. If you come to our level 2 classes, we'll talk all about karma, but I want to address that one particular question by that student. Which is stronger, karma or magnetism? And Swamiji explained, let's say I were to kill a person in a past life. He said then that karma would be lodged as a magnetic vritti in my spine, and not his physical spine. We have 3 bodies, the physical body, an astral body, and the causal body. I'll get more into that later. And so this would be stored as a vritti, as a magnetic whirlpool. And then when the time is right, and that would mean magnetically, when the magnetic influences are correct outwardly, that seed would germinate. Then it would come out, and then someone would kill him. He would reap the benefits, or in this case, there's not benefits at all, of being killed. It's the negative effect of karma. And so you can see that magnetism really is the vehicle through which karma plays itself out through. And when we get further into this talk, we'll talk about how we can control magnetism and whether we can control our karma or not. Now I want to talk about, you meet some people, and they're the worst human beings you could ever imagine, just stealing from people and lying all the time and drinking, and yet they're in this big, beautiful house, and they're driving these big cars, and they have all these servants, and everyone's respecting them, and you're thinking, what is this thing called karma? How did this happen? And then you meet other human beings, they're very humble, they're kind and loving towards all, and they have absolutely no money. And you think, something's not right in this life. How could this be? Are we sure there even is a thing called karma? Are we sure there even is a thing called God? And yes, there is a thing called God. There is a thing called karma. It's just that it becomes infinitely complex when you start taking in mass karma and the karma of everybody. And again, we don't have to worry about the complexities of karma, especially of mass karma. It's enough to just handle the complexities of our own karma. And our own karma itself can be very complex, but with the grace of the Masters, we can work it all out. Now the next thing that I want to talk about when we're talking about karma here is that in the Christian Bible, sometimes it refers to Christ as the Son of Man, and sometimes it refers to Christ as the Son of God. And one day I was just wondering, what is this all about? And Swamiji was giving a lecture, and Swamiji said, if I were to take on the sins of the world, it is said that Christ was crucified so that he could take on the sins of the world. Swamiji said, if I tried to take on the sins of the world, then I would be buried, I'd be dead before you could imagine, I'd be 6 feet under. And so we have to understand that as the Son of God, Christ could take on all the sins of the world. But as the Son of Man, he could only take on a very limited amount of sins. And even when he died on the cross like that, it was to take on the sins of mainly it was to take on the sins of his disciples so that they can become highly purified. Again, I'm straying into the what do we do about it topic. Now, I also, just while we're on Christ and Christianity, I grew up in the West, and something that used to terrify me was that all these Christians would run around yelling, "You're going to go to hell forever!" And I think, oh my gosh, is this true? Am I going to go to hell forever? That sounds bad. And then when I met Swami Kriyananda, he was giving a talk, and he said, a finite cause can never have an infinite effect. Therefore, these Christians who say you go to hell forever are absolutely wrong. And my soul just went, okay, it's okay, we all make a few mistakes in this world, but a finite cause can never have an infinite effect. And you see, hell seems to be eternal, because when we're in a bad mood, when things are going all wrong, time itself seems to take forever. And when we're in a good mood, or when we're with our friends enjoying, Sunday, it's almost over. Time, it just went like that. And we see that time is very much relative to our own state of consciousness. And if we want to achieve a state of perfect joy, we also have to come to an understanding of infinity itself as regards space and time. But these are the things that, as a yogi, you will ponder, and you will go deep within yourself, and you will begin to understand. So, let's see, now we can talk about, I also wanted to talk about animals, that we wonder, do they have karma? Is their life guided by karma? How does that work? Paramahansa Yoganandaji, he said that he remembered being a diamond. Can you imagine? First of all, it seemed like, oh my gosh, if he was a diamond, that he was probably a diamond for a very, very long time. They say diamonds are forever, but I guess they can't be forever. Somehow he got out of that, being a diamond, and then worked his way up, and probably was, something of a plant or an amoeba, or I don't know the exact lineage of how it goes, but you see, life is always trying to express a greater and a higher consciousness. And then those small and simple animals take on a more complex animal form so that they can understand more, so that they can become more conscious. Why do they want to become more conscious? So they can express more joy, so they can have more joy flow through them. And that's the same thing that we as human beings are doing here. That all human beings are united by the fact that we are all seeking to avoid that which is displeasing to us, and we are all seeking joy. As human beings, we seek it in 100 billion misdirections. It's funny that God, He chose the best hiding place. We think we'll find Him over there, oh, we'll go to this temple, oh, we'll go hear this great teacher, oh, we'll go do that. But Paramahansa Yoganandaji said, he said that temples are going to change. That in the very near future, be it in the West or in the East, whether you're in a church or you're in an Eastern temple, that the pundit, no longer will you pay the pundit, and that he will do the arati, and okay, now your karma, you're free from it. That the temples are going to change the pundit, the preacher. He will tell you, oh, you practice this technique. You learn how to go within yourself and find truth. And that the temples will become more of a laboratory, a spiritual laboratory, where you practice that scientific technique, and you do the experiment, and you see, is it true? Is it not true? Yes, I practice this technique. Yes, I have more peace on the inside. And this is the future that we're coming to. So anyway, God has chosen the absolute best hiding place, and that hiding place is within each one of you. And if you come to these classes, you will learn the techniques that teach you how to come back in. So anyways, getting to, do animals have karma? So Master said that they are guided more by the mass karma of a city or even of a planet. That within themselves they don't have so much ego that's telling them, oh, I like this, or oh, I don't like that. That they're just going along, just guided by Mother Nature, just guided by mass karma, and so they don't have too much ego. And essentially they're almost free, but not quite, unfortunately. And they have to work their way up to the human levels where they get this 1,000-petaled lotus, and where they can understand and comprehend God in His entirety. So I'm just going to look at the notes here for a second. Okay, so let's get into the physical karma, the astral karma, and the causal karma. That the physical world we understand pretty well. We live in it. We wake up every day in it. We go to work, and we come home and eat our dinner and go to bed. So and we basically can understand that, if we do good, then it's going to come back to us. If we do bad, then that's going to come back to us. And so that's in this physical world. And so we want to do things like be charitable and give money to good causes. Or it's even more subtle, though. We even want to smile at people. Why? Because eventually people will smile back at us. Swami Kriyananda said at the end of his life, people just out of nowhere all the time would just smile at him. And he said that was because that he smiled throughout his whole life. He was constantly trying to win people's hearts and win people's hearts towards God. He would say that he's not trying to convert anybody to anything except to their own higher selves. So that's a very interesting, fascinating thing, that we're all trying to get back to our own higher self. So we have this physical karma, fine, but it goes deeper than that. That we also have astral karma. And so when we leave these physical bodies, whether it be at night, when we go into the dream world, or whether it be the great exam, when we have our death and when we leave these physical bodies, then we go into the astral world. We stay there for a time, dictated by our karma, and then we come back into this physical world. And so we shuttle back and forth between these two worlds. And then there's a finer world even. Once we get free from this physical world, that we no longer have to come here, fine. Then we are in the astral world and we can become permanent residents of the astral world. But then we shuttle back and forth between the astral world and the causal world. And the causal world is made of thoughts. And I'll just tell you this, it's in our classes, but there's so many New Age thinkers out there that say, it's like, oh, I won't go into it, I don't want to be critical of any other path. But they say that, you know, to think is to create, or if you just think the right thoughts, you'll gain your parking space, or you'll get this, or you can attract money, or whatever, your great career, great fame, fine. There's some truth to it, but it's missing something. Because if you go home right now, and if you try to say, I don't know, that I'm levitating or something like that, that you'll find that you're not. And the reason what's missing is this missing link. The missing link between the physical world and the causal world, or the world made of thoughts, is energy. And if we can put a great amount of energy behind our thoughts, then we can create instantaneously, as can the masters. You see, thoughts, they have a certain power. There are people that have just low energy thoughts, and their thoughts don't go anywhere. They're scattered, they don't know what they're doing, they're bumbling around in life. And then there's masters, and their thoughts, they're focused, and they have a lot of power. And that's energy behind it. And this is how all these three worlds, they're intertwined. The fascinating thing about yoga is that all of these three worlds are intertwined within us. And if we learn to practice Kriya Yoga, we can learn to become masters over all of the three worlds. So, I also want to talk about freedom here. It's a very important aspect of this. So I just mentioned that we can gain freedom and never have to come back to this physical world. Fine. We live in the astral world. We're permanent residents of the astral world. We shuttle back and forth between the astral and causal world. But also we can gain freedom in that we can gain freedom from ego, of this sense that I do this feeling. Ego really, which binds all of this together. Ego plus desire is binding all of this together. And so we can gain freedom from ego and become free right now. Now we still might have physical karma. We'll still need to come back again and again to undo that physical karma. But you see, I like to imagine it as this ego is like a post. And then that post has these strings attached to it. And so we run over there and think, oh, I'm going over there. I'll be so happy once I go over there. And suddenly we feel that string is pulling us backwards. And now suddenly we're launched over in that direction. But once we get rid of this ego, it's that post is no longer there. And so a master, now we're moving into the second half of this talk. A master, he's in the world, but since he doesn't have an ego, everything that he's doing is not accruing to himself, but only to the benefit of the world. And it's how Christ could take on the karma of his disciples. This is one way that masters can help us, free us from our karma. There's a story in the autobiography of a yogi where Babaji has all of his disciples around him, and he picks up a burning stick or a burning log, and he lightly touches one of the chelas on his shoulder. And one of the other disciples is thinking, oh my gosh, Babaji, you know, you're supposed to be the master of kindness here. What are you doing, touching someone with a burning log? And Babaji says, would you rather see him burned to ashes by the decree of his own karma? That his karma was to be completely burned to ashes, but Babaji, he changed that karma a little bit, and he just gave him just a little bit of it, just a light burn. And so the masters, they can take on the karma of us. But I also want to emphasize that the masters, they don't have to work through that way of healing. That they can also heal simply by uniting who they truly are in their causal body, one with God, with the causal body of other souls, and fix them, and fix their causal body from the inside out, and heal people in that manner. So they take on karma if they need to, and they heal in the different ways that they need to. There was one more thing. Oh, yes. On this path, we'll often say that your will is guided by whims and fancies. And we say that because once there was a man in Mount Washington, which was Paramahansa Yoganandaji's ashram in Los Angeles, still is, and one of the, I don't know if he was a monk, I assume he was just having a hard time, and he ended up leaving. And Swami Kriyananda asked him why he was leaving, and he said, I want to have my own will. I want to do whatever I want to do. I can't just keep doing whatever the master says I should do. And Swami Kriyananda went back and told Paramahansa Yogananda this, and Yoganandaji just, that's too bad. Can't he see? Can't he see that his will is guided by whims and fancies? And so these whims and fancies, what they really are our karma from past lives. It's a desire which comes up within us and says, oh, I just have to go to the movies and watch this movie, which also is being influenced by mass karma. An interesting thing, how they all intertwine together. And it's all right to go to the movies every once in a while. But the best thing is to go within and learn to look here and watch the inner movie that's going on in here. There's worlds within worlds inside you. But you have to get over this distraction of the outside, and it's powerful. Maya is certainly powerful, and it's pulling us out. But we have to learn how to turn our consciousness to the inside and see that that's where the true joy comes. In fact, that's where the true joy is. That all of this is just a dim shadow. It's just a reflection. We think it's giving us great joy, but it's not. That always whatever comes, that in the end, it will fail us. That Maya always breaks her promises. And she promises how I promise now. This time it's going to turn out good, and this thing's really going to make you happy. And then in the end, somehow, it doesn't go quite right. And so, this now brings me to, there's in the Gita, it talks about doing our duty. And it says it's better to do your own duty than to fail at the duty of someone else. And now while we're talking about karma, that means that we have already, in past lives, set up all these vrittis, all these whirlpools of karma. And if we go and then decide to do somebody else's duty, then we're starting another wheel. And we already need to just finish all of the circles, all of the cycles that we've already put into motion. And so, now the question comes within, how do I know what my duty is? Master said, whatever's right in front of you, that God's just giving you what you need. Master said, what comes of itself, let it come. So don't go out there searching for, okay, maybe this is my duty, or maybe that's my duty. Go within, get calm, come out of meditation. It will be right there in front of you. And then do it, and do it well. Don't think that you can run away from your duties. You can't. That there's no way. I'll even tell you a personal story that I was working as an engineer in America, and I left that to come and become a monk. And I don't know, 7, 8 years later, I was at our community up there in Pune Ashram, many of you visited, and I was measuring rebar and, checking the depths of this cement and that, and it was the same job I was doing as a structural engineer in America that I left. The exact same one, calculating how much concrete will be there and everything, and I just thought, there's no running away. It doesn't matter what you do. There's no running away. But I'm happy that I made the decision that I made, because now in doing it in that way, when I was measuring the concrete, that I was doing it for the ashram, that I was doing it for Guruji, that I was doing it for God, that I wasn't doing it for my own self. And in that way, we live a higher life. And so that means, too, that whether you're a banker or a baker, whatever it is, that you don't have to run away from that job, but every morning you can say, I'm baking this bread for my Guru. And the people even that taste it, they will taste those vibrations, and your bakery will become a great success if you do it for God and Guru. But if you do it for yourself, you'll live in a little world of misery. So coming back to that, we have to do our own duty, that when a lower duty conflicts with a higher duty, do the higher duty. So if you're going to choose to live a life for God, it's fine. But if you feel that it's your right thing to be a school teacher in this life, but then the mass karma is telling you, be an engineer, don't start that circle, don't start that cycle. That be true to yourself. I've been reflecting on the last few weeks. Thine own self be true. Such deep words, deep, deep words. It's something to meditate on. Okay. So, now, we're in really deeply here. What should we do about this thing called karma? Well, the first question is, should we seek to gain better karma? And as, these spiritual guys do, the answer is always yes and no. And so, yes, we should seek to gain better karma, because if we just have bad karma and we're just thinking about how do we feed our body every day, that there's no way that we're going to be able to sit down and give 3 hours of our day or whatever it is to meditation and deep contemplation on God. We're just going to be thinking about our stomachs and how we can eat more. So on that level, yes, we should strive to have good karma, and we never know when we're going to be out from this thing, when we're going to be free. So it's not safe at all to think, well, I'll just get a little karma. I'm probably going to be free here soon anyways. Don't think like that at all. You have no idea when you're going to be free. And so to always keep striving to get better and better karma. Now, the flip side, no, we shouldn't seek to get better and better karma, because it's always valid in this world that if someone says, oh, come do this, it's valid to say, what's wrong with it? That even in that, when we were talking about the duty, that even when you do your duty, if you feel in line that you're really supposed to be a school teacher, there'll be something wrong with it. There's always something wrong with it in this world. And so why we shouldn't seek to just get better karma is that there's always something wrong with it, and you can never get out of delusion by trying to fix your karma one thing at a time. By the time you stop eating chocolate, stop watching so much TV, stop, smoking cigarettes or whatever it is, all these things that people do, then the chocolate comes right back again by the time you've got the cigarettes under control. And you think, what is going on here? It's like washing a dirty shirt in the bucket that you push the air bubble down and it comes up over here and you push it down. And so there's no way out of Maya by just trying to do it one at a time. That you must come to an understanding of magnetism. And now what do I mean by that? That if you take a bar of iron and that it has all these molecules and they're all pointing in random different directions. And if you try to get in there with the world's smallest pair of tweezers and change each molecule one at a time, then by the time you got to molecule number 10, that the first molecule is already going to switch back around again. But if you wrap a wire around that bar and put current through it, that you're going to generate a magnetic field and all of those molecules will all point in the right direction. Or if you take that bar of iron and you put it next to another magnet, then it's going to become magnetized. Now, why do we talk about that on this path so much? Because if you do Kriya Yoga, you will take your astral body, you will take energy and revolve it around your spine, and you will magnetize yourself, and you will begin to get rid of some of your problems. We're going to get more deeply into that because it takes a while until we can get rid of all of our problems, and at the end here we'll answer the fundamental questions about free will and all of that. Now, let's see here. Yes, while we're talking about Kriya, that it is said in Autobiography of a Yogi that one Kriya, which takes 30 seconds to perform, going up and down the spine, one Kriya is equal to 1 year of spiritual evolution. And so, how do we get out of karma? What do we do about karma? Kriya Yoga. That in one meditation, a deeply meditating yogi can completely get rid of a whole lifetime of karma. Isn't that amazing? In one meditation? When you hear something like that, it's just, yes, sign me up. But then, of course, Kriya is not that easy. That we have to practice Kriya with devotion. We have to practice it with concentration. We have to get in there so deeply that we can literally begin to see our past lives and our past tendencies and learn how to burn those up. But it can happen. Another very interesting thing about being a Kriya yogi and karma, people get afraid to go on the spiritual path because they say, well, this didn't work in this lifetime, and that's not working, this isn't working. Now maybe if I tread the spiritual path, maybe it won't work. or maybe even I will fail at the spiritual path if I tread the spiritual path. The beautiful thing about Kriya Yoga, about walking the spiritual path is, even if you do not become fully liberated in this lifetime, through the practice, your spiritual practices, specifically Kriya Yoga, that you will bring that back over into the next lifetime, that you will come back where you left off, essentially. And so, the spiritual path is kind of, there's no unfinished business. That it's the one thing that carries on with you, and it's continually good, and it's continually working. And we just have to keep heading in that direction. And eventually, we find our way out. And this is an important thing. It's in the autobiography of a yogi again, and it's on the chapter called Outwitting the Stars. And Sri Yukteswar asks Master to get a bangle. And the Master's thinking, but I don't want to be a slave to astrology. I don't want to be a slave to this idea of karma. Why should I get a bangle? And Sri Yukteswar believes, or these might be Master's words, I'm not sure, but it says, what man has done, he can undo. And so nobody other than you was the creator of all of the bad karma that we're now living with, or all of the good karma. And so nobody but you can free yourself from that karma. But the wonderful thing is, we don't have a clue what we're doing, how to free ourselves from this karma, until we take up the spiritual path, until we take on a guru. And then they can help us free ourselves. And then, let's get into this. There's different ways that we can free ourselves. One is by the use of willpower. Another is by association with saints. That the saints can help change us. As we were talking earlier, the saints can take on our karma for us. The saints can actually change karma. It's a fascinating story, fascinating. So this one happened in Benares, and we all know Adi Shankaracharya, who established the Swami order of today. And probably, most of us have read autobiography of a yogi. We know of Babaji, the deathless master that lives in the Himalayas. So this story is about the two of them having it out. So there was a time when Adi Shankaracharya, he was in Benares. And he had a servant. No, Babaji had a servant. And Babaji's servant heard that this famous astrologer, Shankaracharya was a famous astrologer, was visiting Benares. And the servant of Babaji thought, well, I'm going to go visit the astrologer. So he goes and sees Shankaracharya. And Shankaracharya does his readings. I'm very sorry to tell you, but you're going to die tonight. And, okay, the servant's, okay, I'm sure, it probably ended on a low note. Servant goes walking back home to Babaji's house. So I just got the worst news from Shankaracharya. I'm going to die tonight. And Babaji says, don't worry about it. You won't die. In fact, why don't you go back to Shankaracharya and why don't you tell him that I said that you're not going to die. So this poor servant, probably feeling like the table tennis ball, back and forth here, decides to go back to Shankaracharya. And he says, now, my master says that I'm not going to die tonight. You say that I am going to die tonight. Oh, what? Oh, what's going on here? And Shankaracharya says, you tell your master that if you don't die tonight, I will become his disciple. Like, I am an astrologer, I know very well what I'm doing. I've never seen a karma this fixed. And if you don't die tonight, I'll become his disciple. You go back. So the poor table tennis ball, he goes back and he says that, he says I am going to die tonight. And so there's a great lightning storm that evening, and Babaji literally lays his body over his servant, and the lightning striking all around. And so these finer radiations, even of the astral world and the causal world, that were going to cause his death, the Babaji protected him from that. And the next morning he went to Shankaracharya, and Babaji got a new disciple. And so the masters, they can take on our karma like that. The masters can do whatever they want. So let's start to broach this topic, which is very important. So the spiritual teachers over here, they say, hello, welcome, come in. They say, oh, just accept everything. If you just accept everything, you'll be free. And then these spiritual teachers over here say, You must have great willpower. Use your willpower. Change your destiny. Change everything. And so we wonder now, is this all fixed? And I should just accept it and be in freedom in accepting it all? Or should I use my willpower? Like Babaji used his willpower to change what the lightning was going to do with that. And the answer is both. Now, how can it be both? No, our minds, they just want one or the other. Please, one or the other. And so we'll explain how that it can be both. But first, I want to tell this story. It's a good story. This is that there's a master, and he told his disciple, you should eat, you should not eat. Come on, master, should I eat, should I not eat? And then the master just wouldn't explain. And then there was another master, and he's walking with his disciples. And he tells his disciples, now you have to be vegetarians. Might have even been fruitarians, I don't remember this master. And so, the disciples, they eat their meal of fruit, and they're out there, and they're walking. And then the master gets invited into a home of some disciple, and they offer him meat. And the master doesn't want to be rude, so he's eating the meat. And then they leave that home, and they're walking again. And now, these disciples, they're feeling tired. They've only had fruits to eat. And they're thinking, well, of course the master has energy. He got to eat all of that, wonderful meat. And here he's making us just eat fruits and take all these long walks all day long. And so the master, he can read the mind, and he says, oh, you want to eat what I eat? And the disciples think, oh, great. Now I get to eat some meat. Yes, I want to eat what you eat. The master said, okay, let's walk a little more. And so they walk a little bit more, and they come to a blacksmith, the Lohawan. And he's pounding these red-hot nails. And then the master says, oh, can I have a few of those nails? And he takes the red-hot nail, swallows them, and says to the disciple, now you want to eat what I eat? And the disciple says, no, master, I'm quite happy with the fruits. So these disciples, or these masters, they give us, you should eat, you should not eat. But you see, you should eat. Yes, you should feed your physical body. You have to do it. You should not eat. It means you shouldn't be thinking, oh, I'm so happy in your ego. I'm enjoying this food. Oh, this food's just for me. You should be offering it to God and thinking, God, I offer this food to you. God, I offer this pleasure to you. And let no greed defile even the act of eating. If we can give that to God, we can give everything to God. And when we do that, we live in a state of joy. Now, back to this, do we use our will, or do we just accept? It goes back to the story I was just saying. It depends on how much of a master you are. That when your consciousness is fully identified with the entire universe, with God himself, then you can do whatever you want to do. And your will have become infinite. That you can create worlds, you can dissolve worlds. You can eat hot nails, you can eat meat, you can do whatever needs to be done. But you see, the crux of this is on you. That who are you? That if you're defining yourself as one with the infinite Om, one with all of creation, then your will has become infinite. And then yes, it's quite right to use your will and to change your karma and other people's karma. And then on the flip side of this, while we're not in that state, when we're not a perfect master, then we have to accept. That we have to use our will to change what we can change, and that which we're not strong enough to change yet, we simply have to just accept it. And accept and see that it's coming from God. It's an interesting thing, this balance. It's both. This balance between using our will and the balance between accepting. And many of you in this audience know our first technique of Hom Saw. It's a meditation technique that we have. And yet, even in that meditation technique, you're achieving the balance. That you're using your willpower to keep your mind focused in the meditation. And yet, those who are deep meditators are also consciously relaxing. And simply just watching that breath and and just accepting and letting it flow. And so even in our level 1 class, we're telling you how you can do both. How you can use your will and how you can find that balance and relax. Master's words, always remember them. Actively calm, calmly active. It's how you find that balance within yourself. And so now we come to the big question of free will. Is my will free? Can I do whatever I want? Or is it destined? And that no matter what I do, that it can't change. And Master's words were, you have no free will. That you're only free to this extent, that you can choose to love God or reject Him. And it comes back to the same crux of this as to where do we place our sense of I? Who do we think that we really are? That if we place our identification with the infinite Creator, then our will is free, and that we can do what we want. But when we say, I want to do this, that's desire that we started this talk off with. Desire is the chain that binds you to the wheel of reincarnation. Desire is that which causes karma. That Paramahansa Yoganandaji had a disciple named Dr. Lewis, and once Dr. Lewis was walking by a new model, a nice car, and Master said, watch your thoughts, Doctor. He said, watch your desires, Doctor. And so each of us has the responsibility. We don't want to fall into any more traps. We've already had enough of this game of trying to fulfill desires and it doesn't work. And we want to watch our desires and not create more desires. So back to the crux of free will. So once you identify with the entire universe, once you identify 100% with your guru, that it's him within you, then your will is completely free. But to the extent that you bind yourself by desires, then it's completely fixed. Another way of looking at it is that if there's some guy walking down the street and, I don't know, he trips and whatever, and stumbles, if you're a compassionate soul, you might feel a little bit bad for him, but you don't think, oh, why did I stumble? Because it's that guy over there. It's not you. In the same way, when you become a perfected yogi, when you become a Jivan Mukta, that you're just an observer, that you'll be eating, you'll be acting, you'll be doing all the things that human beings do, but you won't be thinking, I do this, I do that. You'll be just like the guy over there. The trip is just another fellow, just that guy. It's just an event that you're responsible for, but it's not who you truly are. And then then from that perspective, you could say that karma is fixed. Again, to take it back to Master saying he remembered being a diamond, that from a state of being a diamond, I imagine that it was already fixed. How long he would be a diamond, how long he would be a plant, how long this, even probably how long he would be a human being. But you see, that's not who he is. It's not who he was. It's not who you are. So to answer these deep questions is to identify with who you truly are. And I'm going to wrap it up with a story that really explains it very deeply. It's a story from Master. Actually, let me check to make sure I haven't forgotten anything. I want to mention this, and then I'll wrap it up with the story. And that's also, this comes from Autobiography of a Yogi. And it says that the seeds of past karma cannot germinate if they are roasted in the fires of wisdom. And what that really on the deepest level is saying is that if we don't identify with, it's my karma, if we don't identify with this little ego, then those karmas, that they can't take hold, they can't take root, that they're not ours, and that's on the deepest level. But then there's even an intermediate level, and this is where we all are, so we may as well talk about it. And it's Kriya Yoga, and I said in the beginning that magnetism is the vehicle for karma. That if we practice Kriya Yoga, we can literally burn up these seeds that are there. And those seeds, rather than magnetically being drawn out and then experiencing that karma, that magnetic seed can be lifted up and roasted in the fire of wisdom here. So Kriya Yoga works on two levels. One, it does purify us, and there's certain karmas that can be mitigated or that we don't have to deal with. But then the highest way of looking at it is that Kriya Yoga transforms who we are, and that we don't identify with it at all, and we are completely free. The Bhagavad Gita says as fire burns a piece of wood, that, let me get this right, as fire burns a piece of wood, the divine fire of wisdom burns to ashes all of our karma. And so that's the understanding again of who we are. And so let's wrap it up now with this story that Master used to tell. It's a beautiful story. And so there was a great yogi. He could commune with God. He was happy and wonderful soul. And in his first incarnation, he has lots of money, but he doesn't have any health. That he's continuously sick. And, he's trying to buy all these remedies and medicines from the doctors, and none of them are working. And he really couldn't enjoy life at all. And, in fact, one of these illnesses, it kills him. And now, you see, he was a great yogi, so he never complained about it as he was going on. He just thought, it's my karma, but it's all right, I won't complain. And so when he leaves his body, he comes to God, and God says, well, how did you enjoy that first incarnation? He says, it was good, but really, without health, what is life? I think I'd like health. And God says, oh, so be it. And he goes back down for his second incarnation, and he has the strength of a sandal, just completely strong. But you see, he had no money. And no matter what he could never get enough food to feed that big, strong body of his. Half the time begging and doing this and trying to get that job, and it just never was working out for him. He was always hungry. Poor guy. He didn't complain about it. But poor guy, he dies of starvation in that incarnation. And he finally goes to heaven, and God says, oh, how was it? He says, thank you, Lord, for giving me the opportunity to have this physical body, but, health without wealth, no thing. Those really, I think that I need both. So please, can I have health and wealth? And the Lord says, sure. So he goes down. He's a great yogi. He can even commune with God, and he feels the joy all the time. He has plenty of money. He has plenty of health. Life is all happy for him, but there's this nagging thing inside. He's lonely. And he feels this is so wonderful, but there should be somebody that I can share this with. He thinks, there must be. It's a good life. At the end, he just kind of dies a little bit of loneliness. And he just, he goes and God says, well, how was it? He said, thank you, God. It was good. I enjoyed being a yogi. And it was all the health and wealth, but I'm lonely. Yeah, Master. Or God says, okay, well, let's try it again. Go back down. This time we'll give you a partner. And so he has health. He has wealth. He's a great yogi. He can commune with God. And God gives him a partner. And so he has this wife. But this wife was a terrible wife. She nagged the death out of him. He couldn't go 2 minutes outdoors. And she'd come back and say, you had your eye on that other woman. No, I didn't. I love you. And so this poor man, he dies of super nagging. And he goes back up to heaven. And God says, what now? I said, oh, okay, I think I almost got it right. I'm going to make an airtight prayer this time. I've got it. Because I want health, I want wealth, and I want a good wife this time. And the Lord says, are you sure? He says, positive. And I've got it. It's airtight. This thing's going to work out perfect this time. I know what I'm doing through experience. I've got it. And so he comes back down. He has health. He has wealth. He's a great yogi. He can commune with God. And he has a beautiful, wonderful wife that's just worshiping him all the time, serving him hand and foot, always full of love. But guess what happens this time? She dies after 2 years. And now he's just going on with the wail of a martyr, just thinking, why can this happen to me? That I had the perfect life, I had the perfect wife, and now she's gone. And he just dies of a broken heart and feeling so sad. And of course, but he doesn't complain about it. He's a good yogi. And so he goes back up to heaven, and God says, I can give you everything. What is going on with you? Do you want anything? What is it this time? And he said, okay, I'm sure it now. This time, 100% positive that I want health, I want wealth, I want a good wife, and she needs to live for a long time. The Lord says, You've got it covered. You've got it 100% now. He says, 100%, I've got it. And so he goes back down, and he has a good wife, but you see, the thing is, she lived too long. That she started developing all of these different wrinkles, you know, all the old age, it sets in. And now this man, he didn't have the full realization. He was a good yogi, but he didn't have the full realization. And so comes into his office a beautiful young secretary to save him. And he has one eye on the secretary, and he thinks, no, I shouldn't. That face is so, no, I shouldn't. So beautiful. I should need to stick with my good wife, even though she has all these wrinkles. I shouldn't. And since he's not a perfected yogi, that magnetism, that it overwhelms him, and he runs off with this young, beautiful secretary. Now you see, this secretary, she didn't love him. She just wanted his money. And once she could extract enough money out of him, then she ran away with some other young guy, and he's left with nothing. He lost his good wife, he lost a beautiful wife, he lost his money, and so he's really crying this time when he dies. And he goes back up to heaven, and God says, what now? And God says, I'll give you whatever you want. And he says, what do you want? And the man says, nothing doing. I want nothing. I want only you, God, that there's always a catch in it. That if you send me down to heaven, that there's always going to be some guy who's going to make a Hades out of it doing something wrong. And that if you send me to Hades, as long as I have you, God, if you're there with me, then it will be a heaven. That I only want you. And so Master says, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these other things will be added unto you. Don't get confused out there about thinking this thing and that thing. Only seek God. And that this path, that it wasn't brought here just for monks and nuns, that it was brought for everybody. This path of self-realization, the path of God-realization, is for everyone. And if you come to these classes, if you take up the teachings of Paramahansa Yoganandaji, that he has brought us the greatest techniques, the greatest, on how we can achieve liberation, how we can become a Jivan Mukta in this lifetime. It is a step-by-step process that frees us. All we have to do is want it. It comes down to desire. Desire. It's the chain that binds us. But once someone asked a great saint, isn't desire, isn't even that a desire for God? Isn't that still a desire? Isn't it going to bind us? And this great saint said that one desire for God will be the magic solution that dissolves all of the other desires and gives us freedom. And so that is our destiny, to merge back into God, to find out who we truly are, to find out that God is joy. So it's been a joy for me to speak this evening, and I now joyfully turn it over to Jaya. Thank you.
Thank you, Jemal. I suppose the moral of that story is God will give you whatever you do want. And if we look at our lives right now, what is it in our past that has brought us here? In a sense, we received exactly what we wanted. So now, let's please all stand for a second. I would like to give you a chance to stretch. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to inhale, tense the whole body. Inhale, tense the body, and now throw the breath out. Tense the body once more, and throw the breath out. And find it one time. Inhale, tense, and throw the breath out. Relax the body, and now let's take our seats. Paramahansa Yogananda used to say, karma, karma, karma. Everybody complains about their karma. And my side of this talk today is to discuss a little bit about reincarnation, but it's important to understand the driving motor of this reincarnation is karma. And people complain about it, and it's not unusual. People come and they talk about this karma, bad karma. Why do I have this karma? What bad karma? How can I get good karma? And I'd like to begin by just rhetorically asking the question, what is good karma? What is bad karma? Is there such a thing as good karma and bad karma. And of course you're thinking, of course there is. Good karma is those things I like. Bad karma is those things I don't like. Isn't that really it is? But you ask one person and the next person down the road, they might not like it at all. So karma, that really, if on the deeper sense, for you particularly, it's not just a matter of what you like and what you don't like. I think a more useful and I think more correct way to look at karma is those things you have set in motion that are now coming back to you. Good karma are those things that are going to propel you toward what your real aim in life is. Bad karma are those things that are going to impede you or to take you away from what your true aim is. Now, your true aim is not health, wealth, beautiful wife or husband, handsome husband. Those are not your true aims, you see, and I think you know what the true aim really is. Our true aim is God. Our true aim is freedom. You could say right action. If you were to describe right action is any action that you take that is going to take you a step closer to what your true goal in life is. Many people ask that question, what's the right thing to do? Jaya, I want to know, should I do this, should I do that? Now, it's not always so easy to answer that from the outside, but which action, which step is going to take you in the direction that is your true direction, the liberation toward freedom, toward bondage, toward freedom? Which one is better? And obviously the answer is that which takes us to freedom. So karma are those things that you have put into motion in the past that come back to you. They come back perhaps to haunt you because they're taking you into further bondage. And good karma are those things that come back, and depending upon your circumstances right now in life or your situation is, that are going to help you go in the direction. But it's not that circumstance, that karma is neither good nor bad. It simply is. But whether it's good or bad is going to depend upon you and your situation and which direction that's going to take you. And of course, this sets into motion the patterns that go on, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, because we cannot possibly, these very complex cross currents that were mentioned by Jemal, that we cannot possibly work all of these things out in one lifetime. So it's been many, many lifetimes. Brahmachari made an interesting statement. He said it takes 5 to 8. I think he really said it another time, 8, but I've heard it also. 5 to 8 lifetimes for the soul, once it's put into motion, to reach that state of the human state. Not going through those animal states, because there's not much free will. The plants don't have free will, but there's some motion toward the human state. But once we reach that human state, we are given a great gift. We're given a great gift, and it's an honor. It's, you might say, it's extremely good karma, and taken in the true sense that I've defined it, is something that gives us an opportunity to go in the direction that our soul wants to go, that you might say is the destiny of why our soul lives here. We're given that opportunity. So it's a great blessing to reach that point where the soul finds itself in the human body. And so we're given a gift at that time. We're given the gift of free will. Now, what is free will? I'm not going to go there, but we're given the thought, maybe is a better way to say it, that we have free will. But perhaps what we really have been given at that point, we're given this little thing called an ego. You see, that's at the nature of that dilemma, free will, no free will. We're given this thought of ego. And now, what is ego? Because ego that is our salvation on one level, because it's in the ego that gives us the ability to make these choices in life, to think, I'm making this choice, I'm making that choice. We learn the ability with ego, we're conscious. We gain the ability to be consciously choose, and in the process of doing that, we can hasten our spiritual evolution. Pretty much a soul evolves at a pace determined by nature, slowly, slowly, slowly moving its way up the ladder of evolution, you'd say conscious in the soul evolution. But when we come to that point of human body, being given a human body is a blessing because it's with the human body that the soul residing in that vehicle has the potential to reach moksha, to reach freedom. Whereas in an animal, it doesn't possess the nervous system to be able to reach that. Now, we do hear stories and so on, but that's very rare that something on the lower levels can reach that stage. That perhaps by exterior grace helping that. But it's when we reach the human body that we have the ego. Now, what is the ego? The ego is the soul identified with the body. The soul resides in it and becomes identified and says, I am this. I am the doer. And what do we know that that's the binding thing also? It's the blessing, but it's also the curse, because we read in the Gita, of course, we have to go beyond this I am the doer. It's God's the doer. But that's the lesson that we're tasked with learning, to overcome that delusion that I am the doer. And so we end up in the body, but yet it's a blessing too, because now we can align ourselves and go in that direction, or not. And there's no predicting how many lifetimes it will take that embodied soul to find freedom once it reaches that point, because some people are wise and make good choices. Other people are not so wise. But typically it takes time, because we become enmeshed in all sorts of folly, all sorts of desires, and we find ourselves lifetime after lifetime having to work these things out. Does it always take so long? Swami Kriyananda once asked Paramahansa Yogananda, when he had overheard a conversation from another disciple saying, that Yogananda had told this other disciple that he had been his guru many, many thousands of years ago. And overhearing that, Kriyananda thought, my gosh. He says, have I been your disciple that long? Yes, yes, yes. He says, does it always take so long? He says, yes. The master said, yes, yes, people come, they come along, and then they get involved in name, fame, desire, one thing or another, and then drift off, and they come back again. And it was, Kriyananda was a little bit horrified. He was thinking, oh my gosh, is that going to happen to me? And people come, people go, but how many people stick? Because there's so many choices that we have. He said, people come, and Kriyananda asked Paramahansa Yogananda at that point, he said, do they always come back here to this world? And Yogananda says, no, no, no. There are many worlds in this universe. This universe is teeming with life. You could almost say, I mean, I'm saying this, I don't believe Master necessarily said this, but I think you would probably agree, that life, in a sense, is the purpose of this universe. The birth of life, the awakening of consciousness in this universe. There's many places souls can go to. And as a matter of fact, if they were to come back here to this place too often, they would start to see through it. And they would learn a little bit too soon. And so consequently, people come and they're attracted to that domain that is in attunement vibrationally with the level of their own individual consciousness. So consequently, higher ages. We live in this age now. Some people say we're in Kali Yuga, others say we're in Dwapara Yuga. Yogananda said we're in Dwapara Yuga. He says, people that are incarnating now are people whose consciousness is in attunement with that. I think, I see young people coming up now they're maybe elder teenagers, like 20-year-olds. I see them and they all seem to be, technology is so easy for them. I mean, they vibrate that way. They all know they all got their smartphones in there. I'm a little bit of a previous generation where I have to think about these things a little bit more than they do. But it seems like this generation is just in tune with that. They probably, and as outward world changes, things change, we come back finding a domain, for the soul finds a domain that's in tune with its own vibration. And so it is that we incarnate again and again. There's a story that I'd like to just move into speaking about reincarnation that I think illustrates our situation. And this story Swami Kriyananda told many, many times. I've heard him, dozens of times say this story. But he said there was once upon a time, Vishnu and Narada were walking. I see Satish shaking his head. He's heard this story. Vishnu and Narada were walking. And it was a hot day. And Narada asked Vishnu, he says, Vishnu, I don't understand. How is it that people get so enmeshed in this Maya? I mean, here we have you, and yet people seem to be distracted in this thing and that thing. I don't understand it. And he says, will you please explain it to me? And Vishnu says, yes, I will, Narada, but you see, it's a very hot day, and I'm very thirsty. And before I tell you why and explain it to you, I'd like you to go over to that village right over there, get me a glass of water, please, and come back, and then I'll tell. And so Narada says, yes, Vishnu, I will certainly do that. Now off he goes to the village to get the glass of water for Vishnu, and he goes up and he knocks on the door, and he opens the door, and the man or lady of the house invite him into the house, and it's nice and cool and in there, and he takes a seat, and the man tells his daughter to come and to serve Narada, seeming to be a good man has come into the house. And so the daughter comes out, and she's beautiful, a young lady. She's beautiful, and she comes and serves Narada, and he's a little bit enchanted. He's enchanted, and the gentlemen, they begin to serve him, and of course he's coming. It's lunchtime, probably. They serve him a nice meal, and again the daughter comes out and serves him all this thing. They begin to have a conversation, and then Narada seems to be a well-kept, settled young man, and they begin talking, and he begins liking it there, and he's enjoying his stay. And the man makes a proposal to him. He says, you're a good man like you. He says, you should, why don't you come and live in this village? You seem to be a wandering type. If you come here, matter of fact, I am looking for a husband for my daughter, and if you want to come here and settle, maybe my daughter, we can marry. You marry my daughter, and I will give you some land, and you will have a place here. And Narada thinks, that sounds like a nice idea. And so he accepts the proposal, settles down, marries the beautiful young woman. The time goes by. They have family. Has one child, two child, three child. He has a nice business. He's prosperous. His land, his domain has grown, and he's doing quite well. And he's forgotten completely about Vishnu. Now, time goes by, and what happens? A flood comes. The rains come, monsoon heavy come, and the river by which the village is situated, the river rises and begins to wash out entirely his land. Pretty soon it's raging, and it washes his home, and now he's in danger. And so he takes his wife and his children, puts one child on his shoulder, one on each hand, and they begin, the water's high now and rising, and they've got to make it to high soil. He begins to walk, but the water's coming faster and faster and faster. And finally, he stumbles a little bit, and the child on his shoulder goes into the water. Well, immediately, he lets go of the other two children to grab the little one. In the process, those two children are washed away, but he misses the little one. And all three children washed down the river and are seemingly lost. And the wife, seeing this happen, is in despair. She says, what is there to live for anymore? She's so sad, she just lets herself go into the river, and she too is drowned. And Narada, he has nothing, and so he too, in despair, just lets the water take him down the river. And he goes into a darkness, drowned. But then he awakens, and there he is on the banks of the river. He's face down in the sand, and he hears a voice saying, Narada, Narada. And he looks up, and it's Vishnu looking at him. And he says, Narada, 1/2 hour ago I sent you for a glass of water, and here I find you sleeping in the sand. Now, that's the story. We've been sent for a glass of water. And here we are listening to this discourse. Oh my, what happened? What happened? And here we are. Well, you see, we forget. We were sent out at some who knows where, who knows how, when, why. But we don't know that answer, and that's the mystical answer that saints and sages and philosophers have been asking since eternity. I don't know. But here we are. I do know that. I mean, they seem to be here. And we find ourselves here, and that's our dilemma. What do we do about that? We have forgotten. And the whole of our life experience, this lifetime, next lifetime, however ever it takes, is the process of learning to remember why we are here and where we're going and how are we going to get from here back to there. That's the journey that all of us are on. And Patanjali, in his Yoga Sutras, he describes this. He says this whole of the spiritual adventure that we find ourselves can be summed up and defined by the word smriti, memory. It's just simply remembering who and what we truly are. But we don't remember. We don't remember. I've asked that question of myself, and I've asked, you might say, ask God, why can't I remember? If reincarnation is a reality, and I've had many lifetimes before, and if my destiny is to find myself back with you, why do I not remember? Why? What's covering this up? Well, this question is answered actually in the Yoga Sutras. This is the reason we don't remember our past lives is because we're too attached to this one. We're so attached to this lifetime, this body, this personality, this idea that I am. Fill in your name after that sentence. Said, I am this person, I am that person, born here, doing this job, married to this person. We're so identified with that that it blocks out the identification of the ego. Remember, the soul identified with the body. And that identification is so strong that we've forgotten anything, the larger picture. But it's said that that's actually, although a little bit perhaps frustrating to us, it's said that that really is a blessing to not remember those past lives. Maybe we were a pirate, tycoon, housewife, actress, or whatever it might, you fill it in. You know, probably at one time or another we were all farmers, you know, because there's lots of farmers. Probably we were also soldiers, because there's lots of those too over history. We were all of these things, but yet on a deeper level we were none of them. And should we come in from lifetime after lifetime, who knows, thousands of these, all of these identities, it would probably be discouraging to us. And it's said that this is why the blessing is we don't remember, because we're seemingly each lifetime given a fresh start. And we can start again without being burdened by all of those memories. Now, I said the word seemingly, because we're not really getting a fresh start. We're propelled by tendencies from the past, lifetime after lifetime, but yet we're not hypnotized immediately. Sometimes you'll find children in the first years, and those of you who have children, and they're not yet grown, they're just coming up, I want to pay attention. In the early years, it's said before the age, typically 3-4 years old, before that time, they're still somewhat conscious of the past, and they'll have these indications of past memory, of past lives, that will sometimes reveal children. But then what happens is by the time they get to be 3, 4, 5 years old, they begin to identify more fully. They don't completely come into the body until a few years have passed, and then they become identified, and then they forget all of that. And there's been many, probably you've read even some of these amazing stories about the past. And how do you account for some of these very prodigies that come in, who, people like a Mozart, who writing symphonies at the age of 5 years old? I mean, it's unheard of, without hardly no training at all. They bring it over from the past, but we forget as we take on a new life. Well, let us back up a little bit to the past life. What happens when we die? What happens? Most people, you can say world over, there's very little knowledge because we die and very few people come back to tell us about it. Although there are these amazing stories of people who have these death experiences and come back. But the masters say, this is how Paramahansa Yogananda mentioned it. He said, when we die, he said we start the soul. The soul, you have to understand, is as Jemal mentioned, is the soul is not defined completely by this physical body. He says we actually have 3 bodies. And the image that is often used is a bottle. If you take a bottle and inside and wrap around it a second bottle and cork that one, and a third bottle, cork that one, and throw it in the sea, you have to, the goal being that little bit of water that's in the first smallest bottle needs to be merged with the sea once again. But each of these three bottles needs to be uncorked one by one until the sea can actually merge with that little bit of water in the smallest bottle. And these are said to be the physical bottle of this physical body. We also have this energy body, this referred to as astral body, and this causal body, that's the body of consciousness, ideas. All of these are manifestations of consciousness. Consciousness is the underlying reality of this universe. But that consciousness vibrates at different rates. Consciousness vibrates very subtly in the world of thought, a little bit more grossly in the world of energy, prana, cosmic force. And even more grossly, when that prana vibrates more grossly, we see the expression of physical matter. And this is the world that we reside in. But when the body dies, it only is what is dying is that outer shell of the physical body. And that life force, that is the real life of the body, is retreating back to the astral realm, the next realm back. Just as you might say, when you break a light bulb, the light bulb breaks, but electricity doesn't die. It's just the bulb has gone. It needs a new bulb now. So the electricity looks for a new bulb to express itself. And so it is, the electricity of this life force needs now a new body to express itself. So it retreats back to that domain of the electricity. And until times are right, karmic conditions are right, that it might return. When the body dies, what happens is the life force begins to withdraw from the body, and it begins little by little, the physical body, the sense of touch, begins to paralyze, and you begin to lose the sense of touch as the life force begins to withdraw from the body. And when that life force is withdrawn from the body, it reaches the point of the heart. And when the heart, that life force is withdrawn from the physical body in terms of in the heart, this area of the heart, he says at that point the heart becomes paralyzed as well. And the ability to breathe, the pumping, the blood, and so on ends. And at that time, the soul or the ego, you might say, the soul residing in this physical form, feels there's a sensation of anxiety. Extreme anxiety comes. Now I'm speaking for the worldly person who doesn't have any higher sense of realities. But for the worldly person, there's fear begins to enter in because we begin to see that we can no longer breathe. Life is retreating, and it's very fearful. And it longs for that breath to come back, and it longs for the associations that it perceives itself losing. And so fear comes in. But at the same time, as we no longer can breathe, no longer can use the physical body, there's a recollection of this, a review, you might say, of this life. We begin to see in this life that is past in perspective. And what begins to take shape out of that review is we begin to see the major tendencies that we are leaving this life with. That what are those major tendencies that have formed in this lifetime? And those tendencies that appear before our mind's eye at that time are the guiding forces that will drive us toward the next body and the next incarnation. Those things that come at the end. So now there's a lesson there. What are those tendencies? And I think each of us, if we're wise, might think about that, because all of us will face this eventuality sooner or later. Those tendencies come. And he says, then for the worldly man, typically at that point, the person goes into a very deep, restful, sleep-like state, because pain is gone. There's no pain and no body sensation. And there's a relief, and it's pleasant. It's pleasant, and the soul goes into a deep state of rest. And for the average soul, a worldly soul, it's only then when it's incarnated again. Circumstances are right, and magnetically they're drawn into a proper incarnation for them that suits their tendencies that they reawaken in the new body. But for a more advanced soul, or one who is more conscious, their consciousness is elevated, one is conscious, makes this transition, and goes into the next state and begins to consciously experience this astral world. It's the world of beauty and energies and colors, and quite amazing experience, which I'm not going to explain here, but you can read some of the Yogananda's books where that's explained in a little bit more depth. We find that then, when circumstances are right, we're drawn back into this world once again. I knew a man who died about 5 years ago. He was a disciple, a Kriyaban disciple, and he was initiated by Swami Kriyananda in the late 1950s. So you can imagine he'd been a disciple for a long time and had been practicing his Kriya regularly since that time. Now, Swami Kriyananda was not in India too much between early 1960s and when he shifted back here in 2003, but he visited from time to time. But when he came back, this man, his name was Mr. Beach, he reassociated himself with Swamiji and with the Nanda Sangha, and I came to know him fairly well. I would see him regularly. Wonderful man, great devotee, humble man, just friendly, nice. But as you can imagine, by that time he's been elderly. And Mr. Beach passed on about 5 years ago. Now the story of his passing was illustrative of what I'm just saying. He was living in Delhi with his family, and his children, and with his grandchildren were there, and Mr. Beach had his room. And one day, Mr. Beach called one of the grandchildren who would spend time with him, and he says, "Boy, son, grandson, go find the family. Tell them that my time has come to go." The grandson, of course, didn't quite know what to think of that, but he'd seen that Mr. Reed was very serious. He immediately ran and got the family. The family came back. Mr. Reed, by that time, had lying down on his bed. And they came and they said, "What? What is it?" He says, "I want you to get the rest of the family. My time of departure has come. And I want you to bring music. I want you to sing." And so they did, this was a bit shocking to them. What would you think? In other words, if your grandfather, what would you, but you'd honor it. I'm sure you would. You'd honor it, but they weren't sure. So, but they did. They came, they got musicians, they were there, they began to sing bhajans. And he asked them to sing this, sing that, and then they were singing and chanting. And then as he was lying there, he began to describe what was happening to him. He says, I'm about to leave. He says, the life force has now left my feet. It's now left my lower legs. And he began to describe, he says, the life force has now gone out of my legs. Now it's moving up, it's gone out, and he began to describe it, little by little, how it was leaving. And then he described how it left until it came up to here and reached the heart, you see. And then as it did, he didn't say anything, he just looked up, and of course he was looking at the picture of Guruji. He looked up, he just said, "Oh." And he went. Now isn't that a beautiful way to go? I would like to go like that. I would like to go like that. That was a life lived in God. That was a life that he had spent 50 plus years as a Kriyaban disciple. He was able to exit in that way. Now, such a one doesn't go into oblivion. Such a one goes out, leaves out. Normally, when we die, the life force leaves here at the point of entry from where it came into the body, which is here at the medulla oblongata. When the soul begins, the conception, the building of the new body begins at the medulla oblongata. From there, the nervous system is made, the nerves, the brain, and then the rest of the body. Well, when we leave in the same way. That life force exits through the tunnel of the Sushumna and goes out from the medulla oblongata, which is the negative pole of the Antya chakra. But if you're a high soul, and you can leave consciously, you leave out through the positive pole of this sixth chakra, out through this point, or if you're a liberated soul, out through the point at the top of the head. When Sister Gyanamata left, Yogananda's foremost lady disciple, Yogananda asked her and went to her bedside while she was on the way going to pass. And she said, "Sister, is there anything that I can grant to you? Any wish that you have, I will grant it for you right now." And she just shook her head, and she asked her a number of times, and he said, "Sister, is there anything?" And she just looked at him, and she said, "Only more and better, more and better." And then she went, at her life. Now, Yogananda had to leave because he knew whenever a close disciple of his passed, he could never be there. Because he said, "I would struggle with Divine Mother to not take her, to take that." So, but I knew it was her time to go. Right? So he went for a drive. He had his driver take him for a drive. And then at a certain point, he said, "Okay, now let's go back." And then he went back, and he walked into the room. She just passed. And he called the other disciples there, two of them, that were in the room. And they gathered around, and he put his hand, he says, "Put your hand on the top of her head." And they did. They put their hand on the top of her head, and it was hot. He says, "You see, she had exited from that point, which is the point of liberation, you see. Her soul had exited out of the sahasrara. So this is what happens when we die. But then we come back, because our karma, you see, now she was liberated, probably not needing to come back, but the rest, you might say, we come back, because it's those tendencies that we have that have to be fulfilled. Jemal mentioned every desire must be fulfilled, including the desire for God. They must be fulfilled, and it draws us back to the proper circumstances. Now, it said at the moment of conception, mother and father conceiving a child, Yogananda explained it that in the moment of conception, there's a flash in the universe. You know, say the astral universe. There's a flash at that point. And those souls that are in harmony, magnetic harmony with those with that, are drawn there. Now, I've also heard it said that there's actually competition. I think one of them said there's competition to get that soul there, because it's a blessing to be in a physical body. Now, the astral world, even if the high astral world is very beautiful, you enjoy it, you think, wow, I don't want to go back, I want to stay here. Well, there's another story I'd like to tell. This is the story of, there was a great saint, and he was a great saint, and he was such a great saint that God sent an angel down. Maybe it was Nardi, who knows? But it was sent an angel down to take this great saint in bodily form up into the heavens. A rare boon indeed. So the angel went down, saw the saint, says, "Oh, sir, I have been sent to invite you to come up into the astral realms in bodily form because of your greatness." And the saint hesitated a moment. He says, "Well, before I accept your very kind offer, I would like to ask you a few questions." And so the messenger said, angel said, "Well, that's very unusual. I don't think anybody's ever refused and wanted, to be taken up into heaven." He says, "But I suppose that seems fair. What is your question?" And he says, "Well," the saint says, "You see, it's been my experience that everything in life has a plus and a minus. You see, there's a plus to everything and a bad side to everything. And I'm sure this must be the same here as well. Tell me, what are the good, I know the good things about heaven, how beautiful and wonderful it would be, but tell me, what is the bad side? What's the downside?" And the angel said, "Well, that's a very, very unusual question. I don't know how to answer that, but I suppose there is one downside that I can think of. You see, once you're in heaven, it doesn't last forever. And sooner or later, you're going to have to come back here. You see, maybe a long time, but sooner or later, you're going to have to come back here. Because it's only here that you can work out your karma." And the saint says, "That's a colossal negative. How would anybody accept such an offer? I reject your offer. I want to stay here because it's liberation and freedom. Why waste the time enjoying your heavens when I can stay here and work out my salvation?" You see. Now the point is, of course, it's a story, but the point here is, it's a blessing to be given this physical body because we are given the opportunity to work out our karma. Now, this has implications because, as I started when I mentioned Master Yogananda would say, people say karma, 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 all my bad karma. Those are gifts to you. That karma, who has created that karma? I don't think he created my karma, but I think I created my karma. It's my karma. And what is my goal in life? My goal is freedom from that karma. So the fact that my karma is coming to me in this lifetime gives me, if I'm wise, gives me the opportunity to work it out, to dissolve it, to overcome it, or whatever those challenges are. But isn't it so that people see it in exactly the opposite way? They see something coming to them that's difficult. Why does it have to be that way? Why? I shouldn't be this way, shouldn't be that way. I wish it would go away. When what is happening really is God is giving you a gift, and you're saying, no, I don't want it. Well, why we can say that, but of course, if you say that, it's just going to come some other time. It's going to come later. There's another story. This is a true story from the life of Lahiri Mahashaya. Lahiri Mahashaya was coming back to his house from bathing in the Ganges. He'd take his morning bath, and he was coming with a disciple, and he was walking down the path, down the walkway there. If you've been to Varanasi, where he lived, you can know that it's not very wide, those streets. They're not very wide streets. He was walking toward his house, and they're old buildings also. And so at that time, he was walking, and he asked the disciple, he says, please tear a small piece of cloth from the end of your dhoti. I will need it to bind up an injury I'm about to have. And the disciple didn't know what to make of that, and he didn't do it. So a little bit further down, a brick fell from the building. It was loose. It was loose and just by itself. It fell, and it fell on the Lahiri Mahashaya's toe and bloodied the toe. It started bleeding. So the Lahiri Mahashaya stopped, tore a piece of cloth off of his own dhoti, and wrapped it up and bound up the wound of the bleeding toe. And the disciple was mystified. He says, sir, if you knew that brick was going to fall, why did you let it fall? Why did you avoid it? And Lady Masha said it was the destiny of that brick to fall, and it was going to fall on this toe. And if I had chosen to avoid it, it would have come sometime in the future, but it would have come with interest. Now, did Lahiri Mahashaya have a karma to have that on fall on his foot? He didn't have that karma because Lahiri Mahashaya was not that body. You see, he was free. It was that body, that vehicle. I mean, the rain falls on that body. There was, dust falls on that body. Bricks fall on that body. It was just the body has its destiny. The Lahiri Mahashaya was not identified with that body at all, but the body, he realized the body had to do what it had to do. Maybe it was the bricks karma. I don't know. The bricks have karma? I don't think so. But there was perhaps that. But you see, it was time to happen. He let it happen, and he dealt with it. He wound it up. He bound it up. But he comes back with interest. And so consequently, our karma comes, and it's a gift to us because we put it in motion. We can be rid of it. The question is, how do we receive that karma? What do we do about it? It doesn't mean to be necessarily be passive, but when we can use whatever comes to us as a vehicle to take us closer to freedom, that makes a good karma in a way. It's a good karma that it would happen. But yet we reject it. And so but yet to be able to work that out is uniquely good for why we are in these physical bodies. It gives us a choice. And so there is competition for that. So souls come. And of course, whether it's true competition or that's destined, I'm not going to even try to answer. But they find themselves, the soul is once again in this body to be able to work out whatever that karma might be. And again and again and again, this play takes place lifetime after lifetime until finally we begin to realize, I begin to see what is going on here. No more is this for me. Many people, when you speak of reincarnation to people, their reaction is, good. That's good. I get to come back and I get to enjoy all of this again and again and again, and again, and again, and again, and again, until finally, as Yogananda said, you reach the point where it becomes agonizingly monotonous. When you start to see through it, and you don't want to come through again and again and again and again. Because you realize, yes, there are things that are pleasurable, but there are things that are painful, and it becomes a monotonous round of suffering. And we want to escape from that, transcend that, overcome that. And the way to do that is to rise above that karma, to transcend the karma, and eventually to be able to transcend that engine that causes us to be drawn back again and again, which is the ego. The ego draws us back again and again. So long as we are identified, soul identified with the body, karma, we are in the domain of karma, and karma rules. But to the degree that we can learn not to be identified, God is working through this body, it's then that we begin to be free. And whatever comes to us, we can enjoy it. You know, I've seen this in life. Many things happen. Some people, it's terrible. Other people, they enjoy it. Other people, in the smallest things, you can enjoy just about anything if you're in God, if your consciousness is elevated. Life becomes beautiful when we have that perspective of life. Everything becomes joyful then. If we have the right consciousness, but if we don't have that consciousness, if we're bound in terms of egoic, selfish motive, eventually everything turns sour and we don't enjoy anything in life. And so this is what we're trying to do, is to elevate ourselves to that point so that we can enjoy everything in life. The fundamental principle of yoga is overcoming, neutralizing likes and dislikes. And personally, you want to bring everything into a state of balance. Just as something, just a little bit of you might say a tip, which I'm going to, I want to go along. Now officially the clock says I have 2 minutes, but I may go 1 or 2 minutes over. If I could give some advice that I have found is, one, in the Bible it says, seek first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added unto you. Practice Kriya and feel joy, and when you're in joy, which is an aspect of God, really, seek ye first joy, and all these things will be added unto you. Seek ye first bliss, and all these things will be added unto you. If you can find joy first, everything else, all karma that comes to you, you're going to be able to enjoy in the highest octave of that karma. And if it's karma, it has to come. Its destiny will make it come. But whether you like it or dislike it is up to you, you see. Anything, it's God's play. If you go to the movies, if you go to theater, there has to be a hero, and there has to be a villain, and there has to be dynamic tension between those, or else you say, what a boring play. You have to have that side, but you can enjoy it. You go out of the movies and say, oh, what a great story that was. I really enjoyed it. Because you weren't identified with it. It was just that light shining on the screen. And if we can see life like that, everything becomes wonderful. It becomes enjoyable. So what I found is likes and dislikes. Likes and dislikes. Just in a little way. I don't worry about my likes. You like things, so I don't worry about those. But I try to moderate my dislikes. Try not to dislike anything. And you'll find that everything comes into balance. You don't have to worry about the likes. But just don't, why do you dislike something? Try to find joy in everything. And you'll find that everything becomes smooth in your life. Your life begins to work, and you just have joy in everything that you do. Nothing bothers you. It doesn't really touch you anymore. Get rid of those dislikes. If you don't like carrots, get over If you don't like, you don't like, this vegetable, that vegetable, this situation, you don't like it's too hot, too cold, whatever, just let it go. And you'll find that your life becomes wonderfully balanced if you can do that. Just that alone. Karma begins to moderate. If you learn to meditate, meditation dissolves that pole that Jemal was talking about, that pole that binds us. It begins to dissolve. And you find that action happens, but it's not attached to you. It's just happening. It's happening through you. And you'll find that somehow things begin to work out right. And you'll find that little by little, you'll be able to overcome this major obstacle that draws us back into this world of delusion and suffering. Swami Kriyananda would always advise us. He said, anybody who practices Kriya Yoga, even if you meditate, if you're on the spiritual quest at all, he says, don't worry too much about liberation. Now that seems like people think, oh, I want liberation, I want moksha. He says, yes. He says, that's true. It's not a bad thing to want that. He says, but don't worry about that. That's not for you, for us, that's not the immediate goal. He says, rather overcome ego. He says, and that has a name. It's called Jivan Mukta. Become a Jivan Mukta, free soul. So and that can be defined as it's God who is working through you. God is the doer in your life. You will still have karma. He says, yes, that doesn't mean you've not overcome your karma, but you're not attached to anything anymore. It'll have to come back. Maybe you'll come back a lifetime, 2 lifetimes, 1,000,000 lifetimes. It doesn't matter, because you'll come back with the consciousness of God in your life. And if you have that, everything else is for the best. And you'll see it in that light. He says, that's what we want. And you'll be like writing your finger in the water. You'll be acting, but there'll be no trail behind you. And whether it takes you 1 lifetime, 100,000,000, it doesn't matter. He says, often great souls come back, they leave karma. It gives them an excuse to come back to help their disciples, to help other people, to help this world. He says, don't worry about that. Find God first. Find joy first. Find peace of mind first. And then all will be taken care of. This is the mystery of reincarnation. Again and again, we're drawn back by desires. Desires revolving around that post of ego attachment. I am the doer. You and I, Arjuna, have had many lifetimes together. I remember mine, but you don't remember yours. That's what Krishna says. I remember mine, you don't remember yours. And why don't you remember? Because we're attached to this one. But do something about it. Meditate. Dissolve that post. And you'll find that not only will you begin to remember, and life will begin to take on the meaning. You'll understand, why am I here? What am I doing? What's my purpose in life? It begins, glimmerings begin to come through. You begin to understand, oh yes, I was a soldier in the past. I understand, I can feel it. You see these tendencies, and it's not all or nothing. You begin to get glimmerings of the past begin to come to you, which can guide you. You understand this life. And then behind that, you understand what the true purpose of life is, which is to find joy, bliss, Satchitananda. That's what Shankara originally said.